So Balaji went on the Moment of Zen podcast a couple days ago, and it was a great listen, first of all, if you didn't get the chance to listen already. But he brought up something I found really interesting, this idea of cloud cartography.
We're used to thinking about the world in terms of being cut up by piece of land into countries. We talk about diplomatic relations of the US and China and Russia and India. But as I've mentioned in like the Network State book, the other way of cutting up the world is not by the lands, but by the minds.
In the past, regular cartography, making maps, is something that we've done for a while, but it's also something that's really specific because there, for example, are certain lines, geographical lines, that are a lot easier to see visually, and there are some where you really need science to map out the carvings in the earth to make those delineations. And he talks about how those maps were created, the entire science behind it, but also that it was something that we've been doing for a long time, that we now have down to the science of satellites and GPS that we're using in our everyday lives. But cloud cartography is something that we haven't really mapped as much. And why I think it's extremely important is because of how much time we're spending on the internet and how much things that happen on the internet can sway a nation, sway a world. One reference that Balaji made was, if the data is permissionless on a platform like Farcaster, then you can start to actually do that cloud cartography. If a Farcaster like platform had all 6 billion people in the world, then you could really start to map these things out, and how early of a time it is to really be mapping it out. But I think that while that's an extremely valid point to make, and I totally agree, I think there's another side of it, which is, what about the data that doesn't just live on a network like Farcaster? I mean, maybe in the example, Balaji thinks that, assume a world where all the data is open and permissionless, but I think sometimes, not every piece of data is as connected as you would like it to be. Just because you have someone's Farcaster ID number doesn't mean that you can fully link all of these actions that they're taking and get a holistic representation of who they are. I think there's another side as well, is just because the data is permissionless and available doesn't mean that it is always the easiest to view, or that people are going to take the most advantage of it. So none of this is to say that this cloud cartography isn't going to be done. I'm just trying to throw the idea out there that there may be other data that is going to be important to pull into this. And it's not just important for cloud cartography, but it's important for the software that we use, because the same way that someone who wants to map out the way the internet looks wants to see data in one place, a user who has their data scattered all over the place wants it to be easier to find for themselves instead of jumping from app to app. Um, that's just something I wanted to highlight because I am a big proponent of data interoperability, and I just really found the cloud cartography section interesting.